Hello, and welcome to the Colorless Land portion of my limited set review for Outlaws at Thunder Junction. Um, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. It's generally pretty brief. There's generally not a whole lot to go over. It's generally pretty the most boring of the segments, but we got to do it. We got to talk about all the cards. And if you have not been here before, I will take myself out of the way here to give you a example of how my tiers work. I do things a little bit differently. I use tiers to grade cards instead of some other traditional grading systems. I like the tiers. They're nice, they're clean, they're simple. Tier 1 is good, Tier 5 is bad. There are 3 tiers in between those tiers that make up the rest of the cards. And we are going to begin with Bandits Hall. So 3 colorless mana for an artifact. When you commit a crime, put a loot counter on Bandits Hall. This ability triggers only once each turn, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, and you can pay 2 and tap it to remove 2 counters from this card and draw a card. So I like this card actually a lot more than I like this effect usually. The Manolith effect generally is pretty bad. The most recent one that was good was the one in Neon Dynasty where you could tap it and an artifact to filter. This is almost that in many ways. I still don't have a lot high expectations for it, but I do think this one will see more play than these usually do. Because it does provide late game upside. This is it ramps you to cast your bigger spells, and then in the late game it gives you some of your cards back for, going down a card essentially to have an additional land in play. There is artifact hate in the set, slightly more main deckable artifact hate than usual. Again, still not super high, still don't think this is an early pick or anything, but I do think it's playable in some deck archetypes. You're not going to be drafted. Don't draft this in week 1. Obviously, I think that kind of goes without saying. But week 3, I could start seeing this be sort of something that people are talking about. Boombox. 2 colorless mana for an artifact. You can pay 6 and sacrifice it to destroy up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, and up to 1 target land. So, it's got some solid stuff going on here. It is 8 mana, right? It's 8 total mana, but you are destroying a lot of stuff. You destroy 2 mana for this, you destroy your creature and their land. It's not bad. But yeah, I mean, it certainly has its place, Not super premium, not a card I'm interested in taking early. But one that I'm interested in, I think, in some decks later on in the format, again, I could kind of see this being a niche sort of role player card. Gold Pan. 2 colorless mana for an equipment. When it enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token, and an equipped creature gets +1/+1 and equip for 1. So, this is like Gold Vein Pick, but instead of getting the treasure every time you connect with your opponent, you get it up front, but you only get 1. I don't know. This type of effect just, I mean, it is an equipment that ramps you, technically, and it is, a short sword is fine. Short swords are fine, but you do typically need to be paying less mana for them than this. It is still an equipment that requires you to have creatures. The creature is only getting +1/+1, which is good, but not amazing. I'm starting this low. This is one of those ones I'm keeping an eye on. It's certainly a card that could move up. For me, it's just I'm just not seeing it, right? I'm not seeing it early. I don't think the format context super rewards this type of effect. So, yeah. Lava Spur Boots. 1 colorless mana for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, +1/+0, and has haste and ward 1 and equip for 1. So this is essentially Swiftfoot Boots. Swiftfoot Boots gives hexproof and haste, and equip for 1, and it costs 2. This is half of the upfront cost, but your creature doesn't have hexproof and gives it +1/+1, +1/+0 in haste. Not excited about these. These are never good in limited. These effects you just kind of, it just costs you too much, right? This one is probably a little bit better than I'm giving it credit for here. You are getting a slight power boost, but. And 1 mana is a lot easier. You know what? Hold on. I've let myself cook. I've moved it up to tier 4. I was sort of in the middle of convincing myself. It's just one of those cards that you can kind of fit the 1 mana in whenever. So it is a little. It's significantly better than Swiftfoot Boots as a result of the hexproof that you give your creature, like, not being as good as just giving it any power or toughness, and also, like, being cheaper to cast. But I still don't think these are very good. I want to be very clear on that. I just think they're not completely unplayable. Luxurious Locomotive, 5 colorless mana for 6/5. Whenever it attacks, create a treasure token for each creature that crewed it this turn. You can crew one, and you activate only once each turn. So it's just like a big vehicle that you can crew. It's like very, very replacement level for your 5-mana spells. You don't really want this. It doesn't attack by itself. But I don't think it's like completely unplayable. It is kind of big. It does make treasures. So I don't think it's like completely terrible, but I don't think it's good either. Mobile Homestead. 2 colorless mana for a 3/3 vehicle. It has haste as long as you control a mount, and whenever it attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it is a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. So, we see this looks, it's like Raiders Carve, right? Raiders Carve was okay. It was actually a playable card in Kaldheim. This card is doing a similar thing. There's no 1-mana mounts, so you're not going to have haste on turn 1. But there's a decent amount of mounts in the format where, I could see you being able to cast this on like turn 4 and have it have haste with something else. And then, like, I don't know, that's okay. Like a 3/3 attacking. 3/3 is sort of my barometer for something that is going to be relevant at any stage of the game. 2/2s tend to get outclassed over the course of the game. 3/3s, it's not really the case so much. It becomes a little bit. They sort of are the meat and potatoes creature. Like, they attack and, like, they're just kind of like the thing, in the mid to late game. So I think this will be able to have attacks maybe even a little bit more frequently than people might think. And if it ever hits a land for you, that's excellent. It is a 2-mana 3/3. Like, the crew 2 is high, but I mean, at the end of the day, creatures are bigger these days, right? Like, you're just going to be able to crew this a higher percentage of the time. I don't love it. I think it's like a fine playable, but I'm not super excited about this card. But I think it's like better than some of your vehicles have been. Oasis Gardener, 3 colorless mana for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. You add 1 mana of any color. So I think this is very similar to the one that is the Manolith. This one has upsides and downsides. It is a creature, which means it can attack, but it can also be removed more easily. It gains you 2 life up front, which is nice. But yeah, not excited about this either. Red Rock Sentinel. 3 colorless mana for a 2/4 defender. You can pay 2 and tap this to sacrifice a land, draw a card, and create a treasure token. That's it. So this has got the Grabby Giant ability, although you can only activate it once per turn because you have to tap this. It has Defender. 3 mana 2/4 is not super exciting. I don't know. I mean, Grabby Giant was like a tier 3 card in Wilds of Eldraine, and that card created a treasure and allowed you to sacrifice treasures, and was also a 4/3 for 4, which is a better stat line than a 2/4 for 3. So I don't know. Not super excited about this guy. Silver Deputy, 2 colorless mana for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card or a desert card and put it on top. And you can tap it to give target creature +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is your typical, 2-drop colorless thing that puts a land on top if you want. I don't like these cards very much. I don't like that this is a 1/2 instead of a 2/1. That makes it worse than usual. Is a mercenary, which is probably good. I don't like these cards as much as some people. Some people like them a lot. They are not for me, necessarily. They're like okay, you know what I mean? Like they do the thing sort of. But this one, being a 1/2 instead of a 2/1 is pretty significant downside in my opinion. Sterling Hound. 3 colorless mana for a 3/2, but it enters the battlefield, you surveil 2. We've seen this before. I believe it was Scry previously, whatever. And that card was playable in, I think it was March of the Machine? No, it was something else. Either way, we've basically seen this card before. And it was okay, but you never really wanted it. And I think that's kind of how this is going to pan out too. Like, you can play this and it's not a complete disaster, but you don't really want it. Tomb Trawler, 2 colorless mana for a 0/4. You can pay 2 to put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. This is bad. It does have a shovel for some reason. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, I mean, this is Sam Black only. Don't play this card unless you're Sam Black. And even if you're Sam Black, you're probably like giving up equity by playing it. So he will never admit to this, but it's probably true. A Braided Bluffs. It is a desert. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can, I mean, these are sort of representing the tapped deserts that ping your opponent. I like these a lot. So they're tier. I put them in tier 3. Basically, every single land is in tier 3 in this format. They all do different things well, and they all are relevant for different reasons. The deserts are especially good in green decks because green decks care about deserts more than the other colors. They're good fixing. They also do commit crimes. They're just really, really solid cards. They might end up even being tier 2. They're just, you're gonna take these over any medium playable just because the value of replacement is so high. We may get to a point where you're playing an off-color half of one of these just because it is a land that deals 1 damage to your opponent and is like a free crime. So that may be a thing that happens, and I could totally see that happening. Arid Archway. So this is a desert that enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, you return a land you control to its owner's hand. If another desert was controlled return this way, you surveil 1. And you can tap to add 2 colorless mana. So this is like a Karu land or a bounce land. So this one has more drawbacks than the usual bounce lands. Bounce lands by themselves are card advantage because you are having 2 mana sources in play for the cost of only 1 card, which is a higher rate than you usually get. This one also could provide you card advantage if you return a desert by surveilling 1. Lots of good stuff going on here. The problem is, with this, that you're only tapping for colorless mana. Colorless mana is tough, and there is an upper limit to the number of these you can play. The maximum is probably you can probably play 1 of these in your deck, but only in some decks. There will be some decks that have heavy enough color requirements that you can't play this card in your deck. You just can't play it. It's too restrictive. But there will be I think most of your 2-color decks, you're going to want to play this card. Again, if you're a very aggressive deck, you don't want this. If you are a deck that is playing 3 colors, you pretty much never want this. But they're in the decks that do not have either of those restrictions. I think this card's probably going to be pretty good. It's a lot of value on your land. It enables you to trigger another desert ability twice in the mid to late game. Again, getting a surveil out of this is pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I do like it. It is very slow, but it also, again, card advantage is the card advantage that these provide is not to be completely ignored, right? Blooming Marsh. So this represents the cycle of the fast lands, the enemy colored fast lands. I think they're the enemy colored fast lands that are available. In this set, they're going to be fine. They don't have types, but you're going to play them in your deck. You want to take them lower than you took the Surveil lands from the last set, but I think these are probably worse than the deserts on average in like the average deck, but in some decks, obviously they're better, and in some decks they're worse. So it's going to be deck dependent, but I think these are decent fixing. Bucolic Ranch. So it's a desert that taps for colorless mana, or you can tap to add 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a mount spell. Then you can pay in 3 and tap it, and look at the top card of your library. If it's a mount card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put it into your hand, this way you would put it on the bottom of your library. So this is just a mount value land. In decks where you have enough mounts, you're going to want to play this. And in decks where you don't have enough mounts, you're not going to want to play this. It's pretty straightforward from that standpoint. It's not a super high pick because, again, mounts are kind of just like a green-white thing. There are mounts other places, but primarily they're in green and white. How much does green-white really want? Like value land? Debatable. Probably not an enormous amount. But I think this is a totally fine card. You can play it. It's just not a high priority. Conduit Pylons. It's a desert. When it enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. So you can add 1 colorless mana, or you can tap 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Yeah, we've seen these before. This is like a, Grotto gaming commission. It's better than Shimmering Grotto as a result of being a desert. Deserts are relevant. You're going to want this land, I think, quite significantly. You're going to want it. I don't think it's better than the dual lands, but I don't think it's like that much worse either. They get worse in multiples. Like there is less value of having a second one than having a first one, but Surveil 1 on your land is nice. It's really nice to have, and yeah, no complaints about this from me, but not amazing either. And the final land in the set is Mirage Mesa. It's a desert that enters the battlefield tapped. You choose a color, and you can add 1 mana to the chosen color. So you've seen these before. They're like Evolving Wilds. They're very similar. They're 5-color lands. They fix your mana, and they're really good. They're solid. Again, I think they're sort of on par with the tap duels. Probably, like, they're obviously worse than duels that are on color for you. They're better than duels that aren't on color for you. They are deserts. You're going to want this. This set has a lot of fixing, as we can see. So this card's going to be, I think, a key card. It's always been good every time they've printed one of these, and this one's no exception to that, I feel. And that's it. That's the end of the Colorless land portion of the set review. Feel free to go check out the other portions of the review. As always, the short and sweet section of the review. But that's what we got. So hopefully you'll join me next time, or go check out the other reviews if you liked this one. That would be great. See ya.